started with a single line of code, and for those bold enough to pursue it, a movement for open innovation, a breakthrough from convention, the power to pioneer new frontiers, whether it's in space, at sea, in finance, healthcare, gaming, or manufacturing. Open source has revealed limitless possibilities to our world. Linux revolutionized banking. Contributing code for nearly 3 decades, Deutsche Bank was one of the first to harness the power of open, forever transforming the banking experience. Linux sits at the heart of predicting dangerous weather events. Austria's State Meteorological and Geophysical Service, ZAMG, saves countless lives every year. Open source enhances security in sensitive situations. Working with us, Airbus Defence and Space created a new industry standard. SUSE Rancher has helped Ubisoft to bring immersive gaming to the next level. Ubisoft's cloud gaming strategy will set the standard for gaming innovation well into the future. Space, humanity's next frontier, is the next playground for open source. The space innovation heroes at Hypergiant are doing the impossible, putting Kubernetes clusters in space for the first time. This gives satellites longer lives and reduces space junk. There is nothing that open source cannot empower. The last 30 years is only the beginning. Open innovation, breakthroughs, the power to pioneer new frontiers are well within your reach. Choose open today.
Today, the Internet of Things and our rapidly evolving digital economy are creating tough new challenges for IT organizations. To succeed, you need to embrace the exploding range and number of new devices that are coming online and quickly leverage new digital applications to meet your customers' rising expectations. But how do your IT operations and DevOps teams deliver the new levels of agility and efficiency your business requires in this always-on digital world? How do you manage the inevitable complexity and keep your organization safe and compliant in the face of constant change? And how do you meet today's tough demands for innovation with limited budgets and never-ending cost constraints? SUSE Manager is ready to help you answer these important questions with a best-in-class solution for managing your IT infrastructure. First, SUSE Manager helps you automate and orchestrate your environment so you can optimize IT operations and lower costs. This includes fully automated server provisioning, patching, and configuration capabilities that translate directly into fast, repeatable, and consistent container, VM, and server deployments. SUSE Manager also gives you the power to reduce complexity and take back control of your IT assets. With a single tool that gives you broader visibility into the status of your IT systems and the relationships between them. This makes it much easier to set up and manage multiple Linux distributions, especially when they're deployed across different physical hardware architectures, hypervisor and container architectures, and cloud platforms. SUSE Manager even provides full support for container images across your different development, test, and production environments, so you can make containers an important component of your continuous integration and deployment processes. Finally, SUSE Manager helps you keep your increasingly complex infrastructure secure and compliant. With the ability to quickly validate security settings, make sure your systems stay properly patched and updated, maintain hardened security profiles for all your different DevOps environments, and automatically check compliance with internal security policies and external regulations. When you put all these pieces together, it's clear that SUSE Manager is ready to help you meet the cost, complexity, and compliance challenges your modern digital business faces. So learn more and start using SUSE Manager to thrive in today's growing and complex digital economy.
Hello everyone, and a very good day. And yep, welcome to our GNOME Asia Summit 2021. I'm Shazwan, will be one of the moderator for these 2 days, starting from today and then tomorrow. Yeah, before we are continuing, so I'm guessing everyone is here. Hi, hello. Okay, let's start with our session with our team leader. Cik, Zat, you are the team leader in Malaysia. Hello, Oliver. How are you? I think you can hear me, right? So I think before we jump to our keynote session, I will be passing my baton to Khairul Aizat. He will be talking to you roughly about our event for today. So Aizat, take it away.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon in I think GMT +8 and the rest of the world. So how are you? I hope everyone is safe and healthy with beloved and the current pandemic situations. I am Khairul Aizat, a representative from GNOME Asia Summit 2021. At this year's summit, we still co-organizing with the support of Genome Foundations and others Genome community members. The organizer also would like to thanks to our sponsor, which is OpenSUSE. For those who are first time joining the summit, Genome Asia Summit is the featured annual genome conference in Asia. It focuses primarily on the genome desktop, but also cover the applications and platform development tools. The summit brings together the genome community in Asia to provide a forum for users, developers, foundation leaders, governments, and businesses to discuss.
Sorry to interrupt, but your slide is not on yet.
Yeah. This is my slide. My slide is on.
No, we cannot see it. No.
Yeah, that is the first page. I haven't changed yet.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. The summit brings together the genome community in Asia to provide forums, users, developers, foundation leaders, government, business to discuss the present technology and futures. So we would like to welcome all to GNOME Asia Summit 2021. And the summit is a 2-day event. You may scan the QR code to see the details of the timetable. All talks are recorded and will be live on YouTube as well. So we do have a code of conduct, so you guys can see all the rules and code of conduct. So please behave and enjoy the conference. Okay, please share your experience by using hashtag Genome Asia 2021 on your social media. So we have this year we have 2 keynote speaker, which is Galina Godohina. I think hopefully I'm pronounce it her names properly. And we have Professor Suhaimi Nafis. So all the biography of both speaker, you guys can check at our event page. Okay, thank you, Christy. So we have our this year shirts. You guys can go to shop.gnome.org to order the shirts. for the rest of the world who interested in our shirts. Okay, then we would like to thank our sponsors, OpenSUSE and Gnome Foundations, and keep calm and enjoy GNOME Asia Summit 2021, guys. I think that's all for me, Sazwan.
Yep, still here.
Okay, yeah, I think we're done. So I'm done for welcoming notes. I would like to call Christy, any representative from Genome Foundations, may I have a few words? Christy, are you there?
Hello everyone. Yeah, hopefully you can hear me. I can see some familiar names. I can see some familiar names on the chat, so I'm so happy to see you again on this event as well. I hope that you will all enjoy, and hopefully you will stay with us throughout the 2 days. As Fenris mentioned briefly, we have our two keynote speakers. The first one will go right after the first talks on each day. And for any questions or ideas or feedback that you have for us, please contact the local team or you can reach out to me. Thank you once again. And well, let's start with the first talk by Caroline and Melissa. Thank you.
Hello, Caroline.
Hi, I'm just gonna get our slides up.
Okay.
There we go. Hi, Melissa.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Shall we get started, or do we want to wait a couple more minutes?
I think we should start.
I'm sorry, we're waiting a couple minutes?
No, let's get started. It's already
Okay.
3 minutes past, yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Wu today, and this is Caroline Henriksen. Today, we're talking about a closer look at GNOME foundations and websites. Thank you all so much for joining us. We're going to go I keep saying this evening because it's evening for me, but I know that it's morning for other people and afternoon for others. So today, we're going to go over a little bit about us, explain why we're doing this, have a little bit of a website overview as well as how to report issues, highlight some helpful areas, and then save questions at the end for everybody. So, as I mentioned, I'm Melissa Wu. I'm a project coordinator with the GNOME Foundation. My email is here. I've been with the organization for a couple of years now, and I help with special projects and events and marketing.
And I'm Caroline. I'm the brand manager for the GNOME Foundation, which means that I work on graphic design projects for the foundation. My email and GitLab tag are there if you need to contact me. And I have been with the foundation as long as Melissa. We started right at the same time, actually. I also was a contributor to the engagement team prior to that.
So why are we doing this? Well, recently we've made some changes to the GNOME website, and we wanted to take the opportunity to highlight some of the new features and show you where some of the more commonly used links were now located. We've been also getting a few questions regularly, and so we hope that this helps direct you for when you're needing to look for answers and maybe who to ask questions of. We thought this would be really great for folks that were new to GNOME, but also for those of you who are very familiar with the environment because of the changes we made. We wanted to make sure we were sharing them with you. So Caroline's going to go through and highlight some of these really important areas, and I will let her take it away.
Okay, so first of all, when we say foundation websites, what are we talking about? There are tons of different websites associated with GNOME and GNOME projects or GNOME teams, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're only going to talk about the 4 main sites that the foundation controls and maintains. So we're going to leave out sites that are managed by individual teams. We're also going to leave out some sites that are more of a technical nature, like Discourse. So that leaves us with the 4 websites on this slide. So first of all, the largest change that we made to the websites in the past year was to take all of the content that was originally on gnome.org and split that into 2 websites. So now we have gnome.org, which holds information and updates about the GNOME project and other technologies, and foundation.gnome.org, which holds information about the foundation. And the main reason for that was to streamline the back end of the websites and clean up the page structure of gnome.org, as well as just modernize the WordPress that we were using. But we also hope that in the future, we'll be able to transition the project page into more of a showcase piece. And getting a lot of the excess content off onto its own site, the foundation site, will help us with that. So the third site you're already familiar with because you used it to access GNOME Asia, and that's events.gnome.org. That site is where you'll find all the information about GNOME-related events. It is run on an open source platform, event platform called Indico, and that allows us to manage everything from the call for proposals to the timetables and schedules to event registration, all in one spot. And that has been extremely helpful for event organizers and the staff and the engagement team. So it's been a lifesaver switching to that. And of course, the last site, which I think is the most fun site, is shop.gnome.org. And that's where you're going to find all of our awesome GNOME merch. This site is about a year old or a year and a half old. We just set it up in time for the 2020 Guadec. Okay, so now that you are familiar with the sites, I'm just gonna do a little screen share and we'll just take a look at some of the pages. Let's pull that up. Okay, the first page we're gonna take a look at is the foundation page. Again, this is where you're going to find information about GNOME Foundation, things like our team. And that includes the current board of directors, as well as some information about the staff and how to contact different staff members. You're also going to find all of that technical foundation stuff like membership and governance and legal and trademarks, as well as reports. That's all on this site now. Another good page to notice is the news page. This is where we post all of our big announcements, things like releases, things like registration opening, or the annual report. So if you're a newcomer, this is a good place to take a look at and just be familiar with, so you know kind of the stuff that we do in the foundation and things that go on. And then one last page on the foundation site is our newest page. It is the job board. So previously we had all of our sponsors for events, we had listed their jobs and their openings that they sent us on each event page. We decided that we wanted to try and give those a longer life and make them easier to find after the events. So we moved them to a more permanent position on the foundation page. And now you can find them all right here. Okay, let's switch to the project page. This is a great place for anyone who's not super familiar with GNOME. It's a good overview of what GNOME is, what the project is, and just a little bit about it, things like where to find it, like how can you get GNOME, and also really important stuff like how to get involved. So this is probably the best resource for newcomers that we have on the site. It just goes into, if you want to start contributing, the ways that you can do that. So say you want to develop apps, we have a link to the Developer Center. Maybe you have an app, but you want to get it connected with GNOME. We have a link to how you can join GNOME Circle. Or maybe you're into marketing and event planning. We have a link to join the engagement team. And if none of those suit your needs, we also have a link to a whole bunch of other teams you can check out. So this is not, you know, the end all be all of newcomer guides, but it does give you a lot of resources to start with. One last page on the project site that we just want to point out is the donate page. It's just helpful to know where this page lives. This is stuff that talks about how donations support GNOME and also how to become a friend of GNOME. Okay, our next site is the events platform. So again, you're already familiar with this, but it's also where we keep all of our other events. So GWADEC, GNOME Africa, we sometimes have Hackfests on here, or social events like release parties that people have sent us information for, that lives here too. So if you want to know if events are going on with GNOME, this is a good place to check that out. And then our very last page is the GNOME Shop. It's pretty straightforward. You know what it is, but right now we have all of the GNOME Asia merch in here. So we have t-shirts, we have stickers, we have notepads, and you should definitely check that out later on. Let's switch back to the presentation. All right, so websites are obviously not perfect. If you do find issues when you're using any of these websites, the very best place for you to report that to us is on GNOME's GitLab. Each of these websites have their own project, and they all live on the engagement team GitLab. And if you have issues or you have suggestions or you think we're missing something on the page, reporting that issue to the specific website GitLab is where we're going to be able to see it and track it and respond to it the easiest. And it's not going to get lost over there. So if you find an issue related to gnome.org or foundation.gnome.org, you want to report it on the main site project. If you find an issue related to shop, you want to report it on the shop project. And if you find an issue related to events, you put it on the events project. Melissa?
That's so great, Caroline. Thank you for that awesome overview. I posted all the links that she was talking about in the chat. So, you know, when you have some free time, you can go back and peruse through the site at your leisure. Some of the areas that she highlighted that we thought were particularly important to this group is the Get Involved page, which is gnome.org/get involved with a dash in between. And really, as Caroline said, that's the place to go to see the different areas where you can volunteer and support the project. The other area is the job board. As a sponsor, you're able to post your jobs here, but then as a person looking for a job, it's a great resource for companies that are looking specifically to recruit you and your talents. And then last but not least, she highlighted the donate page. You guys are all such wonderful contributors to GNOME, but and so we know you're very familiar with supporting the organization. But events like this and the foundation and the project don't really move forward without financial support, whether it's from a company or from individuals. And so we wanted to share this page with you specifically so that if someone says, how can I support GNOME? You can give them this link and help us by acting as an advocate for the GNOME Foundation to help us generate additional financial support for the organization. So, you know, if someone says, hey, I need a charity to support for the holidays, or I'm donating for for Giving Tuesday, this would be the link to use. Caroline and I, after this presentation, we're going to go straight into our campaigns for Giving Tuesday. So keep an eye out for those social media posts and repost, share them with friends. that would be wonderful. This is also a really great area for me to answer this one question that I've seen that came in. It says, can we start a GNOME club at an institutional level? Actually, this is not the best place for me to answer this question because I was misinterpreting this. What I wanted to say here is, as a contributor, a financial contributor to GNOME that says, I'd like to give on a regular basis, you automatically become a friend of GNOME. And there are certain privileges that come with this. And we are in the process of rethinking of what those privileges are. So this is a wonderful time to get involved. So we're going to save this one question for the end. I think going to the next slide, Caroline. That's where we are right now. So thank you guys so much for joining us for our short overview of the websites. I want to leave you with our information here so that if you do have any questions after the presentation, you can certainly reach out to either of one of us or any other member of the team. Caroline, so we have this one question. Can we start a GNOME club at an institutional level? I'm not sure what the question is asking. Are you wanting to start a organization at your university? So if you wanted to start a GNOME club at your university or your school, yes, you absolutely should. We encourage it. There is a wonderful place on the foundation website, or excuse me, the Get Involved page about being a newcomer, which will help you with some initial steps for getting started within the GNOME community. Spreading the word of GNOME and FOSS is certainly something that we encourage, and we would be more than happy to answer any specific questions about how you might be able to get started at your local institution. Caroline, do you have any other suggestions, or do you think that that's
no, I think that covers it. There is also some university initiatives or outreach initiatives already ongoing. So there's a couple engagement team members that work on that sort of stuff for their areas, and it would be probably really great for you to connect with them, and you can hop into the engagement channel and we can find out, you know, who you can talk to about starting up your own.
Actually, Caroline, you bring up a really good point. There is a Rocket Chat channel called University Outreach, and I know that Christy and a few others were re-engaging that group. In fact, we just about it in the Friends of GNOME newsletter. So if you'd like to share your email with one of us, we would be more than happy to connect you with that initiative.
Hi, Melissa. There's another question. He wondering if GNOME has any internship for student as well.
Yeah, so we often participate in programs like GSOC or Outreach. GSOC is Google Summer of Code, if you're not familiar with that. So we usually have positions with both of those programs that anyone is open to apply for. And there's usually more details posted about those closer to when the programs start. So we actually list those on the news site. If you want to follow there, you can get updates. We also post them on social a lot. So if we are participating in GSOC or Outreachy, usually you'll see that post come up on social. And occasionally, oh, sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say occasionally we do have internships separate from those. They're a little more rare, but if we have a project for them, we're able to work with that.
But the wonderful thing about the open source community is that if you want to participate, whether it's in a formal internship or just in a project or to help any one of us, we would welcome it. We're a volunteer-run organization, we encourage volunteers, and there's so many of us that are volunteers. So it doesn't need to be a formal internship to participate. You can certainly reach out to Caroline and say, hey, I'd like to learn more about social media. I'd like to help out with that. Or reach out to one of the engineers and say, hey, I have this great idea. And the best way to do that is through the Get Involved page.
Yeah, good point. I think we're almost out of time. So if there's any more questions. just pop them
Looks
into
like there might be
the
one
chat.
more coming in. Yeah, okay. I was curious regarding the internships. Gotcha. So I think Caroline, yeah, answered the questions about internships, but there's always something. The other thing actually that I do want to plug is that I want to say tomorrow night because it's tomorrow my time, but it's not really night for everybody. The sponsors office hours we will be hosting, and it's a great opportunity to learn more about sponsors that are participating in this conference, as well as Guadic. It's a great way to learn more about the Friends of GNOME initiative, and just a fun time to just hang out before the conference kind of gets going with day 2. So feel free to join us for that, because I'd love to see you and not be the only one on there. But if it's me, then you just pop in to say hi. Would love to hear you.
Yeah, so
Well,
actually, I'll just answer that question, or ask that question. Yeah, Melissa will be there.
I'll be there.
She can tell you all about sponsors and sponsorships. That actually, for everybody else who's not in West Coast, like US time as we are, that's actually the start of the conference tomorrow. So it'll be the first thing before the talks start.
Thank you, Caroline.
Okay.
So if nobody else has any questions, I think that Caroline.
Any more questions from the floor? For the rest, I think if don't have, I think I would like to thanks Caroline and Melissa for giving us a closer look at the Genome Foundation website. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. We hope to see you again in the next summit if we have opportunity to meet again. Okay, I think thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Melissa. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. We look
Thanks.
forward to seeing you the remainder of the conference, and hopefully next time in person.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, will do.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay. We go to our next sessions, which is our keynotes. Our keynote speaker is Galina Goduhina. Hopefully I pronounce it correctly. Galina. So she will talk about developing and promoting open source project, a way to success. Just a big brief about Galina. Galina is a sales director at Only Office since 2013. In addition to higher education in the field of intercultural communication and PR. Galina is always ready to new challenge in setting up communication process inside a company or in a relation with customers and partner. So without any further ado, I would like to call Galina. The floor is yours. Do you have a slide to upload? Hello, Galina. Are you there? Galina? Hello?
Yeah, hi. Hello.
Hi.
Just,
Yeah, great.
yeah, just a moment. I need to upload the
No worries.
presentation.
No worries. Take your time.
Yep, I think I'm ready, so everybody can see my slides, I hope. Okay, so yeah, I'm really glad to be here today. And first of all, I would like to thank the GNOME Asia Summit work team for this wonderful opportunity to give a talk. The topic of my presentation today is developing and promoting open source projects, a way to success. I really hope that you will find it useful and engaging. So let's start. At first, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Galina Gaduhina. Since 2007, I'm a part of the open source project OnlyOffice, former Team Lab. OnlyOffice is focusing on advanced and secure document processing. Since 2013, I'm the head of partner relations at OnlyOffice. And here on the screen, you can see my contact data. So if you have any questions about the talk today or the project itself, you are very welcome to contact me. So open source. I guess you hear these words like every day. For now, open source culture has become the new default. Do you actually know how big is the open source movement? Currently, there are around 200,000 open source projects worldwide. It's pretty much, I think. The Open Source Development Comparative Study of 2018 from the arXiv.org website identifies more than 5,000 open source projects from GitHub distributed over 77 countries. They found out that the USA has the largest number of such projects. It's more than 2,300 projects, about 42%. After the USA followed China with more than 700 projects, United Kingdom with more than 300 projects, Germany more than 200 projects, Canada and other countries, including France, Japan, Australia, India, Brazil, Norway, and many others. So open source is not something local or specific for the single country. It's really global and overwhelming. Okay, open source is really big. It's impressively big. But why is it actually so important? Being an open source project, we understand that open source doesn't just mean that something is free of charge, or even doesn't mean it at all. I won't tell you a secret if I list the following obvious things about open source. Open source means accessibility of essential tools and the most pioneering technologies. Security of these technologies coming from their transparency and reliability is a key to compliance with data protection standards, with data independence. Open source is a way to fight the vendor lock-in. I do not need to explain why it's so bad to have this lock-in. And of course, open source is really a booster for collective innovation. Finally, where the responsibilities distributed in a fair share, the instruments are created collaboratively for definite needs by definite minds. This brings a healthy balance between centralization and openness. Up until 10 to 20 years ago, the field of software development was really secretive and isolated. Developers wrote their codes behind closed doors and waited until each line of code was approved by someone with a higher position in the company. The open source model, on the contrary, promotes transparent and community-based development. Developers are now able to share their codes with others. In turn, the community provides valuable feedback, potential use cases, and sometimes the real lines of code. So it's not a surprise that the open source model affects the way of how software is developed and used. Open source unlocks creativity. Since the developers are not more tightly bound to strict rules and requirements, they try to find out creative, interesting ways to solve some given issue or a challenge with their codes. When you don't set up some limits to your mind, you wake up your genuine intellectual curiosity. And it's better for everyone, both for developers who build great solutions with this way, and users who can take these solutions and use in their everyday lives. Developers are free to choose what projects they would like to work on, and developers even can team up to come up with some elegant solution. Open source highlights the power of diversity. When a team doesn't have the diverse points of view, the innovation level can be really lower, and it's hard to invent new ideas. If we take software development, it means that different opinions and perspectives help understand the real impact of the product. Open source users can tell you about some cases, some features that will be important for the development of your product that you might never imagined. Open source helps understand the value of your project. It can be difficult for individuals or even for companies to determine the real worth of something in isolation. But with open source, the response of the community is more organic. If people check out your project and nobody wants to use it, probably it's not as good as you thought, and vice versa. You can get more positive feedback and understand you should move on. Community input can be really useful, both for startups who would like to evaluate just the idea in general, as well as for any developer or company who is, for example, thinking of implementing, introducing new features. Open source creates a new work model. The traditional model was more about tough competition between companies. For now, we understand that it's more about collaboration and partnership. Yes, of course, I don't mean that a little bit of healthy competition is something bad. It's rather a way to be even more creative. We all have a common goal: to make users' lives easier with our software. And we should strive to this goal all together, partnering up, helping each other. On the slide, for example, you can see a photo made during the OwnCloud conference several years ago. OwnCloud is our partner, and we work closely together to serve our customers who use the integrated solution in a faster and better way. On the photo is the head of our professional services, Alex, and the head of the technical support of OwnCloud, Carlos. Yeah, so for now, many developers and startups opt for going open source. However, the question arises, is going open source the only requirement to be successful? No, unfortunately not. Otherwise, it would be too easy, I think. Some people look at open source as panacea or a golden ticket to success, but it's not true. Open source projects can also face various difficulties. including lack of users, lack of trust, comparison with the big market leaders, etc. The most important thing here is to create a real value of your product and explain to users why is it good, how to use it, how your product can solve their problems, and why they should opt for it. What other risks do you take developing an open source project? Open source is about to stay available for all and everywhere, but open source is also about respecting the author of the code. It can be important to protect your innovation and to make sure your software can be still associated with the team who has created it. The sources like GitHub, SourceForge give a great support in this case. And for sure, you need to choose the right open source license for your project to make it obvious for other contributors, developers, how to use it, what they may or may not, how they can use this code. At the same time, we have to make sure that we are able to continue our work and won't be just thrown out of the market by any big IT service provider who starts offering some business based on our project without supporting the further development by just, let's say, excluding the development team from the process. Unfortunately, it's not just a theory. This really happens every day, as you can see. The next important question is if you plan actually to make money with your project, and if yes, how to do this, how to stay on the stage and continue developing. Probably you need to build some specific process, find appropriate team, or I don't know, just put a big donate button on the website. So it's just worth planning the future of the project in advance. As a rule, a successful project is based on three main fundamentals: high product quality, continuous development, and adequate promotion. You need to keep balancing all three aspects in order to make your open source really much in demand. And even if you created the best solution in the world, you still need at least some promotion. At the same time, ensure that your software is of good quality, get people involved, keep growing at a steady, comfortable pace. Users really expect a certain quality from your software. Quality is a delicate outcome of how well the software is written. In other words, it's everything which makes the software rock solid, understandable, usable. For users, it's really more important that the software is stable rather than it will have some brilliant, amazing feature, but the feature case unstable work crashes. So we deliver stable releases in order to ensure proper work with our products by our users. Being up to date is also important, for sure. Users don't like outdated products. Projects that were updated like more than 1 year ago will definitely not attract new users. It shows then that this tool, this software is just not maintained. That's why we make regular updates. We release fixes according to our schedule, and we also know what we are going to release to do next. It stays on our roadmap. What next? Visibility on developer platforms is of a great importance for open source projects. For example, OnlyOffice is listed on GitHub, SourceForge, GitLab, Stack Overflow, etc. On the one hand, it helps you attract new users. And on the other hand, this way you can collect really valuable feedback from users about issues they might face, or new features which they would like to see in your product. Adopting various packaging, adopting distribution formats. This really increases your chances to bring your software to as many users as it is possible. OnlyOffice supports many of package formats, including those of GNOME-based Linux distributions, including dep, RPM, snap, Flatpak, AppImage, Docker, Kubernetes, and others. Besides, we also work in another direction, making our desktop applications be pre-installed or available on various distros such as LinuxFX, Linux Mint, Zorin, Deepin, and others. This allows users of these distros to directly use our app without some additional steps. And as we know, the easier, the better approach works really well here. Another important aspect is really partnerships, integrations with other open source projects. Exactly what I have already mentioned a little bit earlier. This way, you can offer users even more valuable solutions. Thus, other developers and companies can integrate our editors into their applications. For example, you have your own document management system and would like to edit documents right inside it without downloading, uploading, but creating your own powerful editors will be really a hard and time-consuming task. So here we just come and offer our editors. You do not need to do this yourself. Or let's say you use some sync and share platform. And again, you need to implement online editing and collaboration. Again, here we come and you can take our editors to this platform. Mutual benefit for both users and us. Yeah, remember that people have certain expectations regarding your product. If you don't meet them, they won't use it. That's why you need to be honest with your users, be honest from the very beginning, and don't promise the functionality you just can't provide. When users open your website, they must understand what exactly you are offering, how your product can meet their actual needs. Well-structured documentation is really one of the keys to success. Lacking good documentation is a warning signal for every new user. Unless the tool is really, really easy to use, you will need some level of documentation. You can divide it into multiple levels of experience, from first use to advanced usage of the tool. This way, the users know what exactly to read and avoid just wasting time. At OnlyOffice, along with providing documentation for users, we also provide API for developers. It exposes the functionality of our product, describes the main methods that allow to interact with different OnlyOffice components, thus giving other developers programmatic access to it. Sounds also good, I guess. Think of users who try your product for the first time. When you might think it's all clear, since you really deeply understand and know your product, first-time users may don't have enough experience to comprehend it, may don't have enough time, and nobody likes how to use software. It's not a secret. So along with documentation, we also prepare how-to articles, guides, videos, demo, plan webinars, trainings, etc. Besides, video tutorials allow to attract new users. since they see how exactly your product works. While live webinars, trainings is a really great opportunity for you to get questions in return. Yeah, what we can't imagine an open source project without is its community. It can help you greatly. At OnlyOffice, we are building our contributor community day after day. Our contributors help us test, translate the product. They can develop useful plugins. They report as bugs. And of course, we give rewards for these contributors. You can also ask your community to, for example, support you in some voting for award or help you with the, I don't know, new ideas. The power of community is really unlimited. And to continue the community topic, it's also important to interact with your users on social media channels and forums. Nowadays, it seems an integral part of our everyday lives. It's a valuable resource of getting feedback. For users, it's yet another way to get your assistance if, for example, they just have a quick question about your product. Among popular channels, popular sources we use is Twitter, its open source colleague Fostodon, our own forum, and also Reddit. It's a good idea to ask users questions, to ask users about how they discovered your project, how they use it. This way, you become more aware of the impact you make with your software and discover further ways for improvements. That's why we really collect use cases or success stories. Another benefit here, when other users read such stories, they understand better your project. For some, it's probably easier to decide to even try it. Yeah, and software is not just about the project itself. One of the biggest lessons to learn is that people are often interested in the person or team behind a project. So the ideal situation is that you get to talk about your project, about yourself, about your team. Here, for example, you can see a photo of our team on the CS3 conference. Yeah, and when you get a chance to share your knowledge, to present your solution, use the opportunity and go for it. It increases the chances to be noticed. That's why we often respond to interviews and speaking opportunities like this one today, and we also look for such opportunities ourselves. It's also important to take initiative. Open source events, conferences, they are really, really good for developing, for promoting your software as well. We already took part in lots of them, like FOSDEM, FOSCOM, CodeCon, conferences organized by our partners like Nextcloud, OnCloud, and lots of others. Here in the photo, you can see, again, the guys from our team and our big friend, Studies. And yes, conferences, meetings, it's really great experience. And you meet new people, you come up with new ideas, and it's really great to see that people are interested in your product. It gives you additional inspiration to move on, to become even better. We also join various open source initiatives. Organizations like Open Source Business Alliance and Linux Foundation. We think it's important to combine our efforts to combine them in pushing open source forward. Yeah, I bet everyone has a friend who associates an open source product with something really free, some piece of code with absolutely no cost. Well, it's not true at all. If we think from the perspective of a user, even if you have no licensing cost, there are always operational cost, support cost, the budget you need to have to make sure the software works actually, that is compliant with some requirements, that it's secure. It may happen that an open source solution can cost even more than a proprietary one if you do not include these costs from the very beginning in your budget. For you as a developer of an open source project, there are always a lot of ways to get paid for the software you create. That can be special builds for special customers. That can be providing updates, professional support, any sort of consulting services like training, security fixes. It can be integration with other software. So nobody knows your project better than you. So go ahead and offer your knowledge. If you save time for your users, you can get paid. And what is the result? Starting from a small project intended actually for improving the internal communication among the members of our own team 10 years ago, OnlyOffice rose to universal office apps used by more than 7 million users worldwide on their personal computers, mobile devices, local networks, public cloud. We have more than 50 million pulls on our document server, OnlyOffice document server on Docker Hub. We have over 700 partnerships, including our affiliates. We have more than 230 integrations, including around 30 ready-to-use integrations with various sync and share platforms, DMS platforms, and also embedding in more than 200 web services by various developers. We have 142 repositories on GitHub. In 2021, we released 3 major updates of OnlyOffice docs, plus 7 intermediate updates with fixes. And you may ask, are we satisfied? With no doubts, yes. But at the same time, we will continue to do our best to improve further. So, if you find OnlyOffice project interesting, you are welcome to visit our official page on GitHub to learn more and check the source code of all the components. Here is the link, or you can use the QR code. It's up to you. And we also invite you to collaborate and join OnlyOffice community. We can really promise that you will find multiple options to use your skills, to get valuable experience with us. So again, the links are here. To sum up my presentation, I would like to say that a way to success is not always easy. You need to find your source of inspiration, your lifetime project. To succeed, find things you are really good at and where you can be better than others. If you have already found your lifetime project, constantly improve it, improve yourself. So go for it. Everything is really possible. So I would like to thank you for your attention, for your time. You are very welcome with the questions. And you can also contact our team anytime on our official website, on our forum, or social media channels. You're always welcome. We are open and we are here for you. So stay safe and enjoy this wonderful event.
Thank you, Galina, very much for your presentation. It was so nice to hear all those motivating words. And we are so happy to have you as our keynote for the conference. We have a few questions for you at the shared notes section on the platform. The first question is, what are some of the obstacles you face when promoting the open source projects? And what are the instruments you use to overcome these obstacles?
A very good question. Thank you. So, yeah, speaking about open source project. Yeah, OnlyOffice has really a long story, and yeah, I've shown that we have some good results, I would say. It was not easy, really. We had a lot of obstacles to promote the solution. The most difficult thing here is that when you start, nobody knows your project. Yeah, if you start with something new, with a huge idea, you need to have a time to have the people who will support you, and this always makes you to wait. The promotion of the open source solution is not that fast. If we take some proprietary project, the people usually do have huge budget to advertise the solution, to promote it, to find support, to make partnerships. With the open source solution, on the contrary, you need to find some new ways to move forward, new ways to interest the people, to show them that the project is really worth their attention. Yeah, so you need to really work hard. You need to find the people who will really will be engaged in this process. It's not that easy. You cannot just plan that in 2 or more months you get these or those results. So it takes long. Probably it's the main issue with the promotion of an open source. And again, you always need to convince new people that the project is good, that the project is worth their times. Probably so. Yeah. What do we do in OnlyOffice to promote it? Actually, a lot of things. I think that our team is really the best team ever, just because they always are working in all the days, on the weekends, in the vacations, etc. Yeah, they always try to bring the solution to as many users as we can, to talk to bloggers, to talk to the guys who have blogs on YouTube, with the journalists, to promote some articles together. Again, you need to convince not only the public, the people, the end users, you also need to convince the partners, the possible partners, that the software is really useful, that you will find really a lot of users, and they will get results when they work with you. You have to convince people that you are able to support this project. Again, it's a huge question. It's a very important question, both for the end users, for partners, for the people who really build the image of your project. So you need, it's not enough to have the support team, the good support team, speaking probably different languages. It's also important to convince that this support team is always available, that this support team has really good knowledges in the product, that they are able to help, that they are able to fix issues. They are ready to develop the software further. So you have to convince that your project will stay alive for a long time. It's really difficult work. Hope I have answered the question.
Kind of interesting when you talk about convincing user, because our next question is actually asking about how to convince user to migrate or to use alternative from proprietary office automation to open source office automation, either only office or any open source office automation solution. Do you have any answer on that?
Yeah, the question is really cool.
Yep.
Just because, yeah, on the one hand, it's really easy. If you have a really good software, it's easy to convince people to switch from another software, just because the software, your software, the open source software, you can always check it. You can always get sure that there are nothing dangerous in it. You can invite more developers to check the code. Again, you have the opinion of hundreds of other developers who are also checking this source code on GitHub. It's easier to show that the code will function, that the code is really secure. So again, open source guarantees that the software can be installed on the servers of your end users without any connection with the developer or some other services from the outside. It's really important for some of users. This is from one side, yes. So it's really easy to show something what is really open to the customer, to the end user. On the other hand, yeah, proprietary software, about the office software, for example, they have really a long story. They have names. They are big. They have huge budgets for the promoting, and yes, they are well known. So you have to deal with this. You have to deal with this. You have to give a try to your software, to make the users to just test it, to see how it's working, to see that probably just software is better, that it's performing better, then that it has probably more usable features. Yeah, so if you have competitors that are proprietary software, on the one hand, you have your openness. You can really show what you are doing. On the other hand, you have to really engage people in testing, in giving a chance to your software. Yeah, you have to involve as many people as you can to prove that the software is worth, that they can trust the software, that the software is really of good quality. Again, it's not that easy, but yeah, open source, being open source really helps in this way.
Okay, thank you, Galina. I think we have tried our best. So basically, why I'm asking the question is because I think specifically in Malaysia, would say it's hard to, for example, the use case is for the public sector. I mean, for especially the governments, as you just now mentions that we need to try our best and prove our software is good, but I think it's not enough. So do you have like others like more into like what you call a layman reason or use case, even though we say that, or look at, for example, this country governments are adopting the open source, but they're still not convincing enough by using the use case. So if you have some tips that you can share, what else other than use case on the technicals, we already pitch it out, but they still won't buy our our pitch.
Okay, yeah. So there are a lot of use cases when people switch from the proprietary software to open source. That's right. How to convince them? Yeah, as for tips, yeah. First of all, stay open. Continue to work on the software. It's the best proof that the software is worth switching. Actually, what are the tips I could give here? You know, there are a lot of software, both proprietary and open source. For both types, the one and the same ideas working brilliantly. You really need to be better in some things than other solution on the market. You have to be able to prove it. That's probably the main thing here, the main tip I could give.
Okay, thank you. So we have third questions. What about cost in using open source tool instead of hosted services such as GitHub, Google Meet, etc.? Smaller projects don't have the resources to host all these services themselves. What is your opinion? I mean, like on these questions.
The cost of the open source. Yeah. Again, that brings us back to the question, how exactly you plan to deal with the project further. So if you plan to make money, if you plan to make the budget yourself. Yeah, so you have to plan that people, that developers who will work on the project should stay interested in the software, in the project itself, and developing it further. Yeah, it also goes about the costs. Yeah, as for hosting of the software, again, it depends. It depends on how you promote this software, how you would like to move forward. It happens that, yeah, big companies really use the open source project to promote their own services. It can happen, and I think that, yeah, everybody can face, unfortunately, such a situation. Unfortunately for us as the developers of the open source solutions. For the end users, probably it's not that bad. Again, if this new company, if this service provider is able to support the software to guarantee that it continues to work. Yeah, so the main idea here is to plan. The cost of the development can really be huge for the open source software as well. But again, you can involve the resources from your contributors to support this project. As I've said, the people who help the project to grow can really do a lot for the project itself. They can support them it in different ways, and you just need to support them in return. Yeah, probably I'm not sure that I have answered the question. If not, so please probably rephrase what you wanted to discuss here.
Okay, thank you, Galina. Any more questions from the audience participant to our keynote speakers? If don't have, I think thank you for our keynotes to the keynote speakers. So we will hope to see you again in our next event in either in Guadek or any others open source event, and hopefully possible that we can also meet in person after all this pandemic and goes to endemic. We all, I think most of us like really miss on the physical conference after the 2 years of the pandemic, so we all have the borders already locked down. So as this GNOME Asia Summit also as one of the examples it should be physically host in Malaysia, but we thought that this year all the borders are open, but still unfortunately still closed. So yeah, that's how unfortunate we as the Malaysia community have to host as a virtual, but hoping if we can meet in person in either the rest of Asia Summit or maybe GODEC in the future. I think for that, I think I would like to thanks again to Galina for your time and your talk. So to
Thank
the
you.
rest of the participants, so our next sessions after the break will start uh, at 4:30 Malaysia MYT GMT. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's 16:45. It's not like 14:30. So see you again. I mean in the next sessions. Thank you, Glena. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you again. See you soon.
Thank you.
Shortly.
See
Thank
you.
you. Hello, Jacob. Are you here?
Yes, Aizwan, can you hear me?
Yeah. It's me, Cairo. Sorry.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. So we will continue our session with our next speakers, Jacob Peacherian. He will talk about open source for newbies, learning and contributing. Just a little bit about Jacob. Jacob is an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Saint Gitt's College of Engineering, India. He is a faculty lead of the Open Source Club at Saint Gitt's College of Engineering and was the coordinator of the Open Source Summit India 2021. He is an open source enthusiast and dedicated his time to learn and advocate open source technology. So with his experience, I think he will share with us some maybe some of his work and how to learn and contributing to open source. So without any further ado, I would like to call Mr. Jacob. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. So, yeah. So I hope you can see me. So, first of all, thank you, GNOME Foundation, and especially Christy Progry for allowing me a chance to be speaker for the GNOME Asia Summit 2021 Malaysia. So, before beginning, let me say that I'm also a newbie. So, I would like to share my experience on how I ended up in open source, how as a newbie you could contribute and learn open source. So if there are any open source experts or professionals here, I'm sorry I might disappoint you because my talk is purely for the open source newbies, but still you might get something from my talk. So who am I? Currently, I'm working as a data scientist at Novum Insights, which is a UK-based crypto analytic firm. I was previously the faculty lead of Saint Gitt's Open Source Club, part of the Saint Gitt's College of Engineering, Kerala, India. And currently I'm serving as the industrial advisor to the Saint Gitt's Open Source Club. So you have my LinkedIn details and my Twitter contact details. Feel free to contact me if you want to. So before beginning to talk elaborately on the topic, let me quickly introduce the Saint Gitt's Open Source Club. So, like most of the colleges or institutions, universities, the computer science department or any other department are having different clubs, right? So unfortunately, we were not having an open source club. So even though we are part of the computer science department, we are not having an open source club. So that is a bit awkward, right? So like I was in the teaching field for 10 years, started my journey in 2012. I've known open source. I've seen people contributing to open source communities. I've known Git, but I was not involved with the open source community. So, so this thought kind of struck me. It was like a pain. So everywhere people are talking about open source. Why are our students not contributing to the community? Why am I not immersing myself to the open source ecosystem? So with this thought in mind, we started the Saint Gitt's Open Source Club recently. almost an year back. It was inaugurated on the 6th of January 2021. And we had the opportunity for our club to be inaugurated by none other than Mr. David Boswell. At that time, he was the director of ecosystem for the Linux Foundation. And we had an inaugural session by Mario Balling. At least most of you might have heard about Force Asia, and Mario Balling is a co-founder of Force Asia. So that was the humble beginning that we had. We had two giants in open source, like introducing or inaugurating the club. So currently we operate with more than 200 plus students, mostly from the computer science department of St. Kitts College of Engineering. We have 9 faculty mentors. We have an open source lab dedicated for the students to work on open source projects, to do their Git stuff, to learn new technology. And the club is trying to be active in community building. So what we do at St. Kitts Open Source Club, so just like most of the open source clubs or most clubs, we organize technical talks. So we do it at least once in a week or bi-weekly. We have our students talking on the latest trends in open source technology, talking on latest open source softwares, how to install an open source operating system, like giving our students a hands-on experience. We conduct hackathons and other competitions, workshops on open source tools and softwares, which is really important. And we have conducted conferences, and we recently conducted an open source summit. So that was really interesting. We conducted the open source summit way back in July 2021 amidst the COVID season, what do you say? So it was conducted online, and we had a good panel of keynote speakers, or a good array of technical speakers and keynote speakers. And we had almost 1,300 plus participations covering around 20 topics, and we had 20 to 25 speakers and panel members. And I'm really happy to say that the Open Source Summit was inaugurated by Brian Behendorf. So he was then the general manager for blockchain and health applications, and we had the privilege of having Christy Progry. So she is in the meeting, I believe. She's the program coordinator at GNOME Foundation. So she gave a wonderful introduction to GNOME community, and really thankful for that. So this is what we do at the St. Kitts Open Source Club. We try to, we are new to the open source ecosystem, but we try different ways in which we can build the community, spread the open source word, spread the open source love. So coming to the topic, open source for newbies learning and contributing. The term open source, it has been around for 30 plus years, right? We all know that. We all know why we should go for open source software systems. So just quickly telling the need for open source, obviously security, building in quality software. A lot of people can collaborate with the open source platforms, open source softwares, build on secure systems, customize the way you want it. You just fork up a project, you build your own custom designs, custom widgets, custom code on that. You have the freedom. Of course, you have the freedom to distribute it. You have the freedom to reuse it. You have all sorts of freedom. And the cost, obviously, maybe it could be free. It could be done for minimal cost. You could get support from the community, donations from the community. You'll get a lot of support for your software. You have bugs, errors. People are there to help you. The community is there to help you. So open source is the need of the hour. It is not exactly the need of this hour. It has been the need of the hour for at least for the past 2 decades or so. But still, we have people like playing around with proprietary software, like still working on their Windows machines. So it's time to think. It's time to change. And what is the simplest and the first step to move? So this is from a newbie perspective, not from an expert perspective. So we know where we are working on, which operating system we are using. So I was till I became the faculty coordinator of the Open Source Club at St. Kitts College of Engineering. I was a Windows crazy lover. I loved Windows very much. I loved Microsoft Office, FL Studio, Adobe Illustrator, had a lot of proprietary softwares that you cannot live without, right? So initially I thought like, oh, going the open source way is a bit pain. You don't have the freedom, like you can't have the much pretty or elegant UI UX designs available. You don't get much support. These were my thoughts. So how can I ditch Windows? How can I ditch Microsoft Office? I cannot live without Microsoft Office. So like when I became the coordinator of the open source club, oh come on, you are the coordinator of the open source club and you cannot still cling on to the proprietary software. It's a shame, right? So I made the first and the simplest move, that was to ditch Windows. So at first it might be difficult, but once you are in the open source ecosystem, once you start working on an open source operating system, you've got a lot of options there, you know. It's really simple, it's really cool, and you will be immersed in a whole new world. At first you might have some difficulties identifying where to begin with, or with the command lines or with the GUI. You might find a bit intriguing, but later on, maybe 1 month later or 1 month into the open source ecosystem, it's all going to be fine. So thinking beyond Windows, ditching proprietary softwares and operating systems is the first and simplest move that you could do. And now, which open source operating system should you select? That is a tricky question. So you have hell a lot of free operating systems available. So could go for Ubuntu-based systems, Debian-based systems, Fedora, Sovereign OS, Linux, Mint-Desert, Elementary OS, Pop OS, Arch Linux. The list goes on. So I can talk about hundreds of operating systems based on Linux or other variants of Linux. So which is the operating system that you should begin with? So from a newbie perspective, it's up to your choice. So say you can use the operating system that your friends use or the ones you're familiar with. So maybe if you are making a transition from the Windows, the best operating system that you could go for is either a Sovereign OS or a Linux Mint. I've used both. So that resembles the Windows UI, and it gives you a pretty much the same structure as the Windows desktop environment. Could be really easy if you are making the first transition from your Windows. So obviously Fedora, best for developers. Debian or Ubuntu is the most favorite or loved by operating systems. So Fedora 35 was released recently with the GNOME 35 desktop. It's really cool. And the one lovely thing, or the most beautiful thing about open source operating systems, is that you have a whole lot of flavors available. You can play around with the flavors. Like if you want, you can play around with Ubuntu, say 21.04 or 21.10 for 1 month. Say, oh, I'm bored with Ubuntu, maybe let me try Debian, let me try Fedora. A lot of options are available. And the age-old option like Windows is gone forever, and you have a lot of options available. So how to make your first contribution? So there is a general misconception that to be in the open source ecosystem, you need to know how to code. So that is just a myth or a misconception. There are a lot of ways in which you can make your first contribution, or you can contribute to the open source ecosystem. So what I'm doing is also a contribution. Like I may not be an expert with coding, I may not be having GitHub skills, but preaching the open source itself is a contribution. So you can add translations to project documentations. A lot of project documentations are available in English and native languages, but what if you want to translate them to your own community? You could do that. You could submit your code. You've done a wonderful project. You want the world to know what you have done. You can submit your code through Git or GitHub or some other platform, coding platform. You can create tutorials for certain softwares. You're helping the community. You can be part of community building, just preaching the open source, like arranging meetups, organizing meetups within a local community. You can be part of a hub like Force Asia. You can be part of the GNOME Foundation. You can be part of some other open source initiatives. Most simplest one, using open source. Ditch Windows, use open source softwares, open source operating systems. So even if you are not giving any other contribution, if you're using open source system, that is also your simple and easy first contribution. So you can add examples to code. You can act as a mentor. You can fix typos and bugs in a code. You can do a lot of things. And how to identify projects. So there are a lot of websites, a lot of resources where you can identify open source projects. So I've given a small subset of all those lists. You can go for Open Hatch. Mozilla provides a wonderful documentation on how you could advocate Mozilla. You can be part of Mozilla community. You can even start a Mozilla club at your college or in your institution. KDE Gnome Foundation has got a wonderful tutorial for newcomers. It's really cool. You can simply contribute to Wikipedia, writing articles, or Hyperledger, the blockchain thing. You can participate in Hyperledger translations. You can code. You can upload your code. Or even many of the crypto firms, they need open source contributors where you can contribute the white paper to native languages. OpenStack is one place where you could do your contributions. Now, from a newbie perspective, what is the learning component? So even though I told that to be an open source contributor, it's not necessary to learn to code or to understand GitHub, but still from a learning perspective, it would be great if you could learn and understand code. So for that, you need to have some programming skills, programming basics. You don't necessarily have to be a programmer or a computer science graduate or engineer to do that. With simple mathematical logic, you could be a good program reader, program understander. So you can learn and understand code. You can make your first commit in GitHub or learning Git with version control systems. So that is the first and foremost thing if you want to learn how to be contributing to the open source ecosystem, or to learning to make your own contributions from a project perspective or a coding perspective. So there are a lot of tutorials available for how to make your first commit or how to be contributing to open source code. And try open source alternatives to proprietary software. So just like ditching Windows and Office, you have a lot of variety of options where you have open source alternatives to your traditionally proprietary softwares. You can go for Audacity if you are a sound engineer kind of pro, Mozilla Firefox, or Brave browser. So Brave browser lets you or gives you rewards for viewing advertisements in crypto. So the reward is in terms of BAT, the token for the Brave ecosystem. So that is an alternative for Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. So though Google Chrome, part of it is open source, it is licensed as proprietary. So you have the open source Chromium OS. So it's all based on Chromium OS. You have GIMP as an alternative for Photoshop, Inkscape for CorelDRAW, LibreOffice. They have really improved a lot over the years, and you could explore LibreOffice or OpenOffice as an excellent alternative to Microsoft Office. I can say this because I've been using Microsoft for at least 15 years or 20 years. And when I made the switch to LibreOffice, almost every feature of Microsoft Office is there in LibreOffice. That is a very good alternative. PDF Creator for Adobe Acrobat, Blender, an excellent and famous, most popular open source application. There's software there. Clamwin as an antivirus software. Thunderbird, much used alternative for Microsoft Outlook or your mail integration system. So a lot of options are there. Now, what are the benefits of contributing to open source? You might think, oh, if I'm contributing to open source, what is the benefit? So it is only because of a lot of people contributing to open source that you are having different variants of Linux, different variants of or different open source software systems, better secured systems. So it is only because of community contributions. So what are the benefits of contributing to open source? So coding, you can improve your coding skills. You can gain confidence. You can get recognition. For your work. People get to know your work. The world get to know your work. You will be recognized. There are a lot of awards being given by different communities, like the Community Ambassador Awards, like awarding or recognizing institutional clubs. Connections, get to know different people who are working in the open source ecosystem. That is very important. So just when we conducted the open source summit, as I told, I was able to connect with a lot of speakers worldwide. I was able to connect with Christy Proprietary, Brian Behendorf. So you can grow your connections. You can explore a lot of possibilities with open source. Leadership, you get to gain leadership skills, managing a team, being mentor for a team. You can convert your ideas. If you have an idea, don't wait for Google to hire you. Don't wait for Windows to hire you. The community is there to help you achieve your like your ideas can be converted into projects which can be used for social good. There is a fun element, working with a team, collaborating with a team. Obviously, there is the fun element. So there are a lot of benefits for open source. So I've just given a few of those benefits. You can think of a lot of options, a lot of benefits for why you should contribute to the open source ecosystem. And there are a few common myths and misconceptions surrounding the open source ecosystem. So people think, oh, I need to be an excellent coder and a Git expert to be an open source contributor. Well, we have already broken that myth. You can contribute to the open source fraternity in 1,000,000 ways or in 1,000 ways. So you don't need to be an excellent coder. You don't need to be a Git expert. You don't need to be a computer science expert, or you don't really be part of a big community to make all these kind of contributions. I need to learn Linux commands? Really? No. Shell scripting to kickstart my open source journey. It is good if you can master Linux, master the shell scripting. It is always good to learn something new, right? But it is not a necessary thing. Open source software is inferior quality. Now, that is a very common myth or a common misconception that proprietary software lovers have, but it is not true. Open source software is not of inferior quality. It is at par with proprietary software or even one step above. So to know that, you have to immerse yourself in the open source ecosystem. You have to start using the softwares, and it is always open. You can improve it the way you want. So if you find an open source project to be of not at par with your proprietary things, you can always customize that. You can get the help of the community. You can build your own software, share it with the community. Thousands of people will like fork your software or join hands with you to improve your code. So obviously there is a possibility that you could be developing one of the finest softwares out there. And there is less support for open source software. That is again a common misconception. It is like thinking like, for example, you're working with a Windows team, or you need an update for Windows. You need to wait, say, 1 or 2 years to get that update happen, because they're working on a limited team, say maybe hundreds of coders or developers working for the Windows system or any other proprietary software. They're getting paid. You're paying for their software, and their updates come, say, once in a blue moon or something. But for the open source projects, open source operating systems, say, even for like operating systems, Ubuntu, there are 2 releases, like one major release happening, one minor release. Fedora comes with 2 releases a year. GNOME comes with different versions, like 1 or 2 versions at least a year. So there are a lot of versions coming in, a lot of updates happening within the open source community. You get a lot of supporters because thousands of people are there in the community to help you achieve what you want to. So these are the common myths and misconceptions that should be busted. And by concluding, I want to quote Linus Torvalds. In real open source, you have the right to control your own destiny. So you think you want to be a victim of a data breach. A proprietary software or operating system is always having a backdoor entry to your system. Who knows what all things they are monitoring, or you want to go the open source way. So this is one code in the open source ecosystem that is always very meaningful. In real open source, you have the right to control your own destiny. So with this, I try to conclude my presentation. I hope it was a bit useful for you, at least for the newbies, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Okay, thank you, Jacob, for your sharings. I think you reminded me, I think, how I started contributing to open source as well. So you give like how and the benefits of contributing to open source, and thanks also for sharing some myths and misconception of the sharing. So I have some question for you, if you can see on the left. So you just mentioned that you ditched the proprietary software. So my question is, did you manage to ditch the proprietary software and living with it?
So as a first step, ditching proprietary software was a bit difficult initially, because I was finding difficulty installing the open source operating systems, like understanding how the commands work. So right now I've very much limited my use of proprietary software. I've installed, as an initial step, I tried installing Linux Mint because I found it very comfortable making a transition from Windows. So I used Linux Mint for some time, then I switched to Fedora 34, and now I'm using Ubuntu 21.10, the beta edition. So at least I can say that more than 90% of the time I've ditched proprietary software and I'm living with it.
Okay, cool. So it sounds like you can still survive without the proprietary software, right?
Definitely,
So,
you can still survive, but initially it would be a bit difficult. But later, once you're into the ecosystem for at least 1 year, for 2 years, you can find alternatives. You will get used to the alternatives.
okay, my other questions, like do you encounter any like sort of like a distro war from the newbies when amongst selection of the operating system or the desktop environment for the newbies? For example, specific to your open source club or in Kerala generally.
Yeah. Could you just brief on what you mean by the distro war?
Oh, so you haven't faced this scenario yet. I mean, okay, so I might share. So because like in when you started have an open source, right? It's not like a war. I mean, like so-called like when you are choosing that someone will pitch, oh, this one is better, this one is better. So that's why I'm just throwing these questions to you. I mean, is it you encounter or might be your what you call like your future? I mean, we get this kind of scenario in your club. I mean, like because like okay, people wants to use KDE and GNOME, or and then the open source people will say, oh, the BSD Unix is better. So that kind of thing. So yeah, have you faced that in the club?
Very good question. You've been specific to the kind of distributions. You can have a lot of options, like a war within your mind. Oh, should I go for Ubuntu? Should I go for FreeBSD? Should I go for Arch Linux? Something like that. So as a newbie, you won't be having that confusion. That's what I understood. Once you become a pro, you will be having the confusion. So once you are a newbie, oh come on, let me try Linux Mint. I know there are a lot of alternatives, but let me try Linux Mint. So I started with Linux Mint, and after say 1 month or so, oh, I'm kind of bored with Linux Mint. Let me try Fedora 34. So once I landed with Fedora, I found it's more kind of useful for the developers. So you need to know a bit of command line things. So let me try Ubuntu. So now I'm happy with Ubuntu 21.10. But I think that is very good. That is the beauty of open source. Like it's like going to a restaurant and you have a menu. You can choose a lot of food options are there. That's really cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think my other questions. I mean, also open to others of the participants. So, what is the challenges starting a new open source club at your institution or Kerala in general?
Yeah. So as I began initially, especially in South India, I don't want to generalize it, but still, in most of the colleges, like students come there, they do their undergraduate, BTech graduation, Bachelor of Technology. They just learn the theory stuff. They might work on some proprietary softwares or coding platforms, and they just leave. So most of the people or most of the students are not aware of what an open source system is. They might not have worked on a Linux system, so they might be still using like Turbo C++ or something like that instead of say a GCC compiler. So students need to get exposed to the open source ecosystem. That is very important. So the main challenge that you face is the initial inhibition. Like students might be very used to, or they're relaxed with the Windows environment, and when you're quickly throwing into the Linux environment or the open source environment, they feel like, oh, this is not for me. I could have worked easily on a Windows machine. Why do you want to force me to do open source thing? But once they are in the system, once they get to know with the people, once they are part of a community, once they interact with a lot of students worldwide, only then they will understand the beauty of open source systems. So initially, it's like switching from your favorite cartoon and say starting seeing a whole new series. So to get in love with the series, it takes some time. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. So any more questions from the participants? Anyone? Okay, if don't have, I think I would like to thanks Jacob for your sharings for us and the audience of the GNOME Asia Summit. So hoping that we will see you again and keep it up. Good job. I mean, don't give up in starting a new club. So it's your new journey, right? Yeah, as a newbie. So there's more to come. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. So we will start with our next sessions. Title Computing and Genome, the Asia Connections, will be delivered by our speaker, Oliver Props. Just a little bit about Oliver. Oliver is a Swedish citizen with an academic background in information science, which he studied at Gothenburg University. He have been involved with the genome for about 10 years, during which time he has contributed to different engagement and marketing activities within genome. So without any delays, I will pass the floors to Oliver. Hello, Oliver, are you there? Hello. Hello, Oliver. Oh, okay. So we will wait for Oliver. He's having some connection issues. While waiting for him, how you guys feel about a few topics previously? You might share your feedback in the chat that we have in the room. Hello, Oliver. Are your connections okay? Hello, Oliver. Are you there now? Oliver, are you there? Hello. Hello, Oliver. Are you okay now? Okay. So yeah, you may start your sessions. Have you uploaded your slide, right? Oliver, can you hear me? Hello. Hello, Oliver. Can you hear me? Your mic on, Oliver? Your mic is on. Do you turn on your mic? We can't hear anything from you. Are you turning on your mic, Oliver? Oliver, can you click the icon, earphone icon below?
Layer.
Apa dia?
Layer.
Oliver, can you refresh your browser and join with microphone? Oliver, are you there? Hello everyone. We are very sorry to announce that due to the our speaker having some having a technical issues, we will postpone his talk to tomorrow, and we will update the timetable accordingly. His talk will be at what time tomorrow. Once again, I would like to apologize for any inconvenience. So our next track will session will start at 6 p.m. So see you at 6 p.m. this evening for the topic how Box can help you contribute to Genome. So we are really sorry and see you at 6 p.m. for our next sessions. Thank you, and we apologize for any inconvenience. You guys are more welcome to join the second track because still running on the second track. So you guys may join the second track for the current speakers. Thank you.
You are now on.
Hello, Oliver. Are you okay
Hello.
there?
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I'm terrible. Yeah, right. So my name is Oliver. Right. So, yeah, I had this technical. I'm terribly sorry. Really. I feel
No. I think it's normal for some of the version. By the way, I think it's okay for you to, if we move your talk to tomorrow session. Can we do that?
Yeah.
So that you can share it.
No, sorry.
We are planning to move your talk to last session tomorrow. Can we do that?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No. It's yep. So, no worries, but I think that's the best. I think that's the best way because it's your. I mean, it's your. I mean, this is your flaw, but because of due to technical, we cannot continue it. So no worries, we can do it another time. But don't worry.
No. Okay. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. No. Yeah. I want to. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry. This technical thing. And I just wanted to let you know I'm very fine, so there should be, and I'm really excited. It was very unfortunate because I worked some on this presentation and I've been involved with with the projects, and I feel very strongly for both GNOME and GNOME Asia specifically. So it was really an honor, and this thing came up. So I'm very sorry, yes, if this and I hope this does not think people don't interpret this the wrong way. I can say that I otherwise, yeah, you know. So yeah, sure.
Okay, no worries, Oliver. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. See you.
Okay, see you. Is Philip here already, right? Yeah. Hi, Philip. How are you?
Hello, I'm pretty good. How about you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I really miss unfortunate just now what happened, but yeah, things happen. Okay, so are you We have a few minutes before 6 p.m. before you start. You have uploaded your slide, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. How's things over there? I mean, like, how's the pandemic things? Still?
Yeah, I'm based in the Czech Republic, so yesterday we actually had the biggest amount of cases in the whole pandemic.
Oh.
So the situation got really bad. Really unfortunate.
Oh, really?
Yeah, unfortunately, only 60% of the population is vaccinated. So we are having a second surge in Central Europe, in Austria, in Germany, and Czech Republic. Numbers are pretty high.
Oh, ouch. Stay safe. Okay. So our next session is how bots can help you contribute to Gnome by Mr. Phillips. A little bit of introduction. Oh, sorry, maybe I need to resume recording. Okay. Mr. Phillips is one of our bot director at Gnome Foundations. He also has a software engineer at Red Hat and Gnome developer maintaining Gnome box and contributing to various other parts of Gnome such as Gnome settings and Nautilus. So I guess without any further ado, so the floor is yours.
All right. So thanks everyone for being here, for attending Gnome Asia. And this is a pocket presentation that I've been doing a couple of times, which goes about promoting Gnome boxes and also trying to get a bit of introduction of how you can use boxes to contribute to Gnome code, translation, marketing. As you said before, I contribute to the Gnome Foundation for almost a decade now. I mostly focus on code. I work in Gnome boxes part-time, I would say, probably half of my working hours for Red Hat. And besides that, I also contribute to our Google Summer of Code effort, Outreachy, and the Gnome Foundation itself. So I'm pretty happy to be here in Gnome Asia, and I really wish that we actually could be meeting physically, but the situation is what it is. So I'm looking forward for the future editions, so I can finally attend Gnome Asia. The last physical conference we had in Gnome Asia was Indonesia, and I was really about to attend, but I got a visa problem at the time. So unfortunately, I haven't attended Gnome Asia so far, but I'm really looking forward. I have plenty of friends that attend Gnome Asia from India, from China, and I would like to meet the folks over there. So nice to have you guys here, but at the same time, looking forward for a physical conference as well, or maybe something mixed.
Also,
but anyway,
I'm really fortunate to meet you because I was in Indonesia also that last time.
Ah.
Okay, so, no worries. Go ahead.
Hopefully next time or next year, or GUADEC as well, right? I hope we also can help fund folks from GNOME Asia to attend GUADEC in Mexico. Let's see how that's gonna work. But anyway, getting to the topic, Boxes is this virtualization manager application. It's like VirtualBox or VMware, but it's focused on the Linux virtualization stack. And in Linux, there's this kernel component called KVM. It's a kernel driver, like the driver you have for all your devices and your appliances. This is a very abstract way of putting it. But the KVM driver allows you to actually have high performance with the kernel by doing direct memory access and some operations that are much more optimized than what you would get with another hypervisor, like VMware or VirtualBox. So virtualizing with boxes, you are virtualizing with libvirt and with QEMU and with KVM. So you're relying on the Linux virtualization stack or the standard Linux virtualization stack. It's often common that Linux users use Virtual Manager. Virtual Manager is actually based on the same stack as boxes. They are just both different front ends in terms of graphic interfaces. But in terms of the virtualization stack, both of them rely on the same tools. So most of the experience in terms of performance you get in Virtual Manager and boxes should be slightly similar. There are differences on device assignment and something under the hood, but basically that's the point. So if you're using Linux, it's widely advised for you to use either boxes or Virtual Manager because the performance is just much better. And there's also some system integration that I want to point out later. The system integration that we provide is actually the cool thing that allows people to contribute to GNOME in such an easy way. So one of the features that Boxes has is the easy downloads. So later on in the talk, I'm going to do a demo, so we're going to see this on the interface as well. But one of the things Boxes has is it has a database of operating systems. And this database, it's called label as info. And it has a database of which operating systems exist, what are the resources that they expect, so in terms of memory assignment, storage assignment, which sort of devices they support. Some devices support certain sort of 3D acceleration, some devices support certain types of internet cards. So we have a database of all of that, and we also have a technology that is able to detect in a given operating system image, like an ISO file that you just downloaded from a distribution website. We are able to detect from the metadata what are the operating system included on that image. So this allows Boxes to set some smart defaults. So when you create a virtual machine with Boxes, you actually don't need to be so knowledgeable of operating systems internals. You can rely on the defaults because the defaults have been picked up from this database. So most of the times you are lucky and your distribution like Ubuntu, Fedora, Debian, and also Windows is going to be detected, and you can just do a next install, and Boxes is just going to do the whole thing for you, including the downloads. The distributions that are freely downloaded on the internet, they can be downloaded from Boxes. So you also don't need to be hunting for where do I get Fedora Cloud Edition, where do I get the Debian net install. So all those things can be found in the Boxes download, and it just downloads the image and it starts the installation for you. One other feature that Boxes has is the express installation. For certain operating systems, so far Fedora, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Debian, OpenSUSE, and Windows, we are able to automatize the installation. So you actually download the image, you select the express installation, and Boxes will do the whole process of the install for you. It's going to do the automatic partitioning, creating of user accounts. It's going to get your user account from your host and create the same user account on the virtual machine. So you simply go for a coffee, watch the spinning dialogue there, and then once the installation is done, you can get back and just continue from the session itself. So it's very magical. It feels very magical. Unfortunately, we don't support lots of operating systems yet for this method, but this is very convenient. I work in Red Hat, and one of the things I do is to backport changes into older versions of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So some security issue has been found upstream, or some major bug fix has been fixed. We usually get the patch, those changes, and we ship to our clients who are in various old versions of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. But this requires us to test all those versions, right? It's the integration test when you see how your application is going to behave against the whole environment that you're deploying, your platform. So for that, you usually need to create various virtual machines. So sometimes I can start 5 RHEL virtual machines at the same time and tell them to all install themselves. And then when it's ready, I can just go there and just do the proper testing that I need to do. So this is actually very convenient. And if you are working for other distributions, you probably can find this experience very relatable. That you just need to test something on a fresh install of the distribution or in a live session, and you just don't want to go through the installations. Some installations can be really, really demanding. Like you need to know about partition table, create a user account, select which group of packages you're gonna get. So once again, Boxes picks some good defaults for each operating system installation, and you get that things for free. And we also have some very nice system integrations, which is, for instance, the sharing of files. You can drag and drop files from your host operating system into the window of the virtual machine to send files over there, if this virtual machine is supported. And you can also create share folders that can be visualized crossways. We are still having some limitations with Flatpak because of the sandboxing, but in a classic Boxes installation from your distributor, you also should be able to do USB redirection, so you can pass my camera from my physical webcam into the virtual machine. So I will be able to, for instance, do a Windows video call in a Windows virtual machine while I'm running Linux on my host. So these are very interesting features that really can improve the testing and the experience of everyone who are developing software in general, but specifically if you are developing on Linux, that sometimes you need to test something on Windows, or sometimes you're a designer and you need to see what other people are doing. You know, it's very common on our design process that we collect some sort of relevant art. So what does Windows do? What do macOS do? what are other distributions doing? And we need to open up these virtual machines and try out those buttons, those knobs, and see how things behave. So Boxes is also very convenient. I'm aware that a lot of folks on the GNOME design team are using Boxes to be able to test things, especially in future GNOME, right? Not sure how deeply familiar you are with the GNOME development, but GNOME is an umbrella organization with various small projects which are somehow self-governed to a certain extent. And each one of these projects is making its improvements and building it, but you actually only get to integrate the whole thing and see it all together when you put it together in an installation, right? Either you're using GNOME OS or a distributor has packaged those changes. And it's very important that we test the changes before we ship to our users. So we need to really be testing the whole experience as a whole. And virtual machines are the best for this because it's very unreliable for you to be building development code in your actually professional machine. You have other work to do, or other people are using the same machine as you. So you don't want to really brick your computer or just leave it in a very bad state or damage and lose user data. So virtual machines are also very safe in that regard because it allows you to keep your operating system clean and stable as your distributor desire. And you get to have fun with virtual machines because virtual machines can be broken, thrown away, and recreated very, very fastly. So these are some user stories, right, that I have been presenting, and my goal for the rest of the second part of the talk is actually to do some screen sharing and show to use some of these things and how they can be achieved in Boxes. But I listed here some user stories that you might relate. So if you are one of those users on these user stories, you might find Boxes useful to use. So the distro packager is the person who is responsible for getting an upstream package and packaging in a certain format for a certain distributor. So somebody packages it as a deb for Debian and Debian-derived distribution. Somebody packages it as RPM for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Fedora, and OpenSUSE and other RPM-based distros. So the distro packager is a person who is definitely maintaining various distributions, so they need to have various installations, various versions of the same operating system, and sometimes even spins and variants like server, workstation, desktop, cloud, sometimes different architectures. So having to maintain this wide range of variations of our operating system is something that distro packagers need to do, and Boxes is very convenient for that. The upgrading process of a distribution is also something that is very hard to actually reproduce. Sometimes we want to announce a new Fedora, like I'm also involved with the Fedora upstream community, and we want to announce a new Fedora, and one of the things we want is users from Fedora 34 to be able to upgrade to Fedora 35. And if people are not able to upgrade from one version into the other, it's a no-go for our release. So one process that we need to really try is the upgrade process to see if things breaks or not, and stuff like this. So another contributor that might not necessarily be a coder or a packager is a release notes writer. You are going to document what is upcoming on the next GNOME, and you want to see how it looks like. You want to take some screenshots to put into the release material. You want to record some quick videos to have a demo, some promotional material as a YouTuber that you're promoting GNOME. So you also can use a virtual machine to preview what's ongoing and take screenshots of it. Oh, sorry. And also another use case that I find to be very useful is the GNOME Shell extensions. You're developing GNOME Shell, you usually have this experience that the extension breaks because some change happened in GNOME Shell, and the extension didn't account for that, didn't change accordingly. So as a GNOME Shell extension developer, you also will be able to test the newest GNOME Shell in GNOME OS in a virtual machine, and be always testing your extension to keep the compatibility. So once a new version of GNOME shows up, you actually don't need to bother about compatibility because you've been testing already further ahead. And yeah, as a GNOME developer, if you want to build your application on a different environment. So let's do some screen sharing and play around with Boxes. I hope you folks can see my screen and confirm there. Yeah, I see myself, so it's likely working. Cool. So I recommend you get Boxes from FlatHub. FlatHub.org, you can search there for Boxes. Flatpak from FlatHub is packaged by ourselves, like by the GNOME developers, and this means that we get to guarantee exactly the version of the virtualization stack you're going to get. So the experience is much more consistent to what we are promoting. If you get boxes from your distributor, you are also relying on your distributor packages adjusting the whole stack by themselves, which sometimes happens that they are pretty good. Like I have experience with the Fedora folks, which are pretty good at maintaining the libvirt and QEMU packages, but also have experience with other distributors who didn't care as much about packaging. So have some integration problems, like certain component being built with a certain feature that is not supported by another version of that component. So by getting the Flatpak, you just leave all that behind and you just get to use the versions that we tested, that we intended to be used. So let's open boxes. And I have already a bunch of virtual machines, as you can see. So this is how it looks like when you have a couple of virtual machines. Here on the left side, on the top, I don't think you guys can see my cursor, but I am doing some bubbles here. So I hope they are also getting on the screencast. But when you click on this dialog, boxes will detect some sources. These are files that you have on your disk that have been detected to be operating systems. So these are files that I have downloaded over the years, and they are in my hard drive, and they are Linux distributions, so I can just right-click here and get to install them, including Windows. Here we have some feature downloads that each distribution gets to decide which ones appear here. This is the ones that we decided for Fedora, but it can be differently. And here the operating system downloads page, where you can search for OpenSUSE, you can search for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you can search for Fedora. So it's a very powerful tool, including the GNOME OS nightly. The GNOME OS is an image that is produced with the latest changes in the GNOME project, and they are all integrated together, and we build an operating system. This operating system is not aimed at supporting real hardware, so you shouldn't be using it in production. Also doesn't receive security updates, so you should definitely not be using it in production. But it's ideal for you to test GNOME changes. You should be using a regular Linux distribution where the distributor is responsible for the whole security matter. And GNOME OS, I recommend you use it in a virtual machine, so you get to experience the newest things. So clicking here is going to make it download the GNOME OS image, but I already have it downloaded, so I'm just going to click here and start. Yeah, we're going to see the whole boot process. In the meanwhile, I'm going to just take a look at the chat to see. Yeah, everything seems to be all right. So, all right. So here I am on GNOME OS. I already have an account with my name. So I'm logging in, and you'll see that it's pretty much the same experience as a traditional GNOME session. If I go here, for instance, to the settings, you'll see GNOME OS version, the GNOME version of the image that I downloaded, and GNOME OS can even be updated. Another feature that could be used here, other than just taking screenshots of things, you can, for instance, take a screenshot with boxes, and this is a screenshot that was taken and it ended up on my personal pictures folder. So you can also go there and pick that up. So here's the screenshot that we just took. So as a person doing marketing material for GNOME, you could also start a virtual machine and take a screenshot of the new interface of Nautilus here and easily get these screenshots out of the virtual machine by just using the boxes functionality for a screenshot. Another possibility is that, let's say I am building some code over there, and I just want to send a file to the virtual machine so I can access that file on the virtual machine. So I'm going here through my files to see if I can find something that would work. But let's say I want to send a bash history file or some patch or some log file. So I can just drag from my host operating system into the virtual machine. And you can see that it is now inside the virtual machine, and I can open inside the virtual machine. So this is pretty cool way of doing file sharing. You can also send file over here and select the files in a file browser, and the file just gets transferred automatically. You can also do some physical machine management things like force shutdown will be the equivalent of pulling the power off the virtual machine and just turning it off. Some scenario you might eventually test. We also support Windows virtualization. We have the Spice agent that provides this integration with Linux and with Windows. So you have automatic screen resizing with boxes, you get file sharing. Clipboard is also shared, so if I were to copy something from here, I would be able to paste it inside my virtual machine. So this is also very convenient if you're doing development and testing your builds in a virtual machine. So let's see how Windows performs here on the boot. Well, yeah, it's going. So you'll see that once the session starts, that the Spice agent is going to adjust the resolution to the window size. So now we have a Windows desktop here that can be used. It's a bit slow, but I think it's a bit slow also because I'm doing the presentation. It's very heavy on the graphics, but the experience is usually pretty smooth. The properties dialog is getting a major redesign now. I actually, if I have some time later on, I can do a sneak peek of how that new layout is looking like. But here you can also adjust the memory assignment to the memory, the maximum of disk size, so you can limit the disks to grow to a certain number and then just no longer grow. You can assign the CPUs, and you can even let the VM to run in the background, which means that you can close boxes and let the virtual machine doing whatever it's doing. Let's say you are rendering a video or doing something very slow. So let's close here, and here you can see that I have a Windows experience that I can just, it wants to update on shutdown, so let's pull the cable again. Another very cool feature that Boxes has is snapshots. Once you install a virtual machine with Boxes, Boxes creates this snapshot that allows you to revert to the state of your virtual machine to a specific moment in time. So if you are going to do something destructive in your virtual machine, this is a possibility of you reverting that or avoiding getting yourself into some trouble, because you allowed yourself to create a recovery point in history, right? So here I have two versions of Boxes running simultaneously. That is also something that is supported nowadays because of Flatpak. And yeah, let's for instance try to exercise a bit of file sharing, for instance. Oh, this is a broken installation, so let me try this one maybe. No, this one is broken as well. Maybe the GNOME Likely one should work. But here on the devices and shares, once the session has started, I should be able to see a section where I can assign a folder to be passed to my virtual machine. So let me log in. Oh, it didn't appear because probably GNOME OS doesn't have the agent installed. But yeah, I think you can get the idea from some screenshots, or maybe I have another virtual machine over here that has folder sharing supported. Maybe this one has. This one. Yes. So here I also can edit the configuration of the virtual machine. The virtual machine has this XML file that is provided by libvirt that describes the whole configuration of it, like where are the files, what are the memory assignments, boot order, CPU architecture, which devices it has. So if you are advanced users and you know how to manage virtual machine domains with libvirt, this is also a very, very cool feature. So let me see if I log into this Fedora, if I can get. Yes, so here I have some folders that I have shared with that virtual machine. I can actually delete them and create them again. So let's say I want to share my desktop folder or my music folder. So I want to pass my videos. I don't have any music, so I want to pass my videos folder to the virtual machine. So now I should be able to open Nautilus here in the virtual machine. And in the other locations, I should be able to discover that share. Yeah, there's a bug here. So sorry about that. But you should be able to discover that share if the bug is not present there. So basically, since I have only 3 minutes left, this is basically the features that I want to show you. And I want to encourage you to also go to newcomers, the wiki.gnome.org/newcomers. I'm going to put the link here, where you have a step-by-step about how to contribute to GNOME. So you can also use a builder and Flatpak, and you can work with that with boxes alongside. So you'll be able to build a Flatpak with builder and maybe drop the Flatpak bundle into the virtual machine, or you can just code with GNOME Builder and just use the source code to build in that virtual machine. So I feel that boxes can be a utility that can be useful for everyone. As a translator, you should be able to test your translation in a new version of an app. So you also should be able to get your .po file dragged into the virtual machine and then build the virtual machine with your new language. So you are able to test the changes with the new strings that you just added. So that's basically it, and I guess I have some time for questions.
Hi, Philip. Oliver here.
Hey there.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Should we have like, is it okay if I write? So what would you think is like what are the important things that you would want to see, what you would want to focus for in the next release of boxes, or like what are the challenges for the app that you would want to address? What are the most urgent issues, would you say, right now with boxes, and like how can the, in what way can the limited resources use, or what way can the app best improve going forward?
That's a good question. The main changes that I'm landing on this new Fedora version, actually the new boxes version 42, is the new preferences dialog. We have had a very bad review about our preferences dialog that has some situations where it allows the user to shoot themselves in the foot. And this is an expression that we use when we are mentioning that the user is able to break their installation by accident. So one of the things I want to fix is to prevent the user from setting values assigned to their virtual machine that can actually break their virtual machine without a possibility of reverting that. So the new design that we are landing also relies heavily on snapshots. So once you make a big change in your virtual machine and that change can break your virtual machine, we encourage the user like, hey, maybe you create a snapshot here, because if this change really breaks your virtual machine, you can revert the change. Otherwise, it's undefined behavior. We really cannot promise that all the guests, all the virtualized operating systems are going to behave the same way when you change the settings behind the doors. So if you would resize a Windows virtual machine memory assignment from 4 gigabytes of RAM to 2 gigabytes of RAM, Windows can break. Windows could say, like, I don't work with 2 gigabytes of RAM, so I'm not booting anymore. So these are some cases where users are breaking their system by accident, and Boxes really wants to prevent that, or at least create some saving points where the users can undo the mess that has been done. But one of the main obstacles for me to contribute to Boxes nowadays is that there is no very strong active development in some parts of the stack that are important for Boxes. The display part, the part that renders the view of the virtual machine, is maintained by Spice, and Red Hat is no longer interested on making much out of Spice. So a lot of the changes that they are happening in that part of the stack are focused on cloud deployments and not specifically on desktop deployments. So I would say that new volunteers can contribute to Boxes, but I also be happy if they would contribute to other parts of the virtualization stack, like the Spice project, QEMU, libvirt. But that's it.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Philip. I think we have several questions. I think the longest questions for today's. So the first question is, in the far future, will it be theoretically possible to list the box virtual system in the grub menu to boot into directory?
Well, this is somehow possible with the virtualization stack, but not necessarily something that would involve GNOME Boxes. GNOME Boxes is still very centered around the user session and the integration between the host and the guest, between a GNOME session or like a desktop Linux session and the virtual machine. I would say that in this case, you probably should manage with libvirt directly. I don't know if there is any tool on top of libvirt that could automate this, but it should be possible, but it's not something that is in the scope of Boxes. But yeah, it's doable.
Okay, the second question will be, will it work in KDE and how this is different than VirtualBox?
It works on KDE. It actually works pretty well. There's this. I have a colleague actually called Jan Gurulik, and he's working with Qt and with KDE community to make the gap between the way GNOME applications behave. Sorry, my timer. The gap between GNOME applications in GNOME and KDE. So he has a library that allows GNOME applications to look better on a KDE session. So if you're using boxes from Flatpak with everything updated in a very well-maintained distribution, it's very likely that your KDE session is going to have boxes looking very nice in terms of contrast, buttons, and spacing, and all that. It's going to be kind of adjusted to the KDE style. And the rest of the virtualization stack is completely bundled inside the box's Flatpak. So if you're using the Flatpak, the experience in GNOME and KDE should be the same.
And how different in VirtualBox?
Yeah, VirtualBox uses its own hypervisor, so the whole emulation of the operating system is done using some proprietary or VirtualBox-specific technology, while Boxes just talks to KVM, talks to the Linux kernel. So talking directly to the kernel bypasses the prioritization of processes in a user session. So to put it in a not so complex way, most of the user space things that you do on your GNOME session, they are not high priority events to the kernel. The kernel has some high priority things like keeping your hardware going, keep your disk spinning and shit like this. So the idea with using KVM is that you can ask the kernel to actually do things much more faster than what is expected on user space. When you're using VirtualBox on Linux, you don't get that privilege. So all your system calls, all your requests, they are not that optimized. They are not optimized to a kernel level. They are still waiting on the kernel process escalonator for their time to run. So memory access and other things, depending on the workload, of course, depending on the application you're going to do, if you're just trying something very small, you are not going to notice the difference. But if you're going to do a very computing intensive process on your virtual machine, you're going to notice that KVM performs much better. And there are benchmarks proving that. You can search. I think Phoronix did a benchmark on performance on KVM, and it just beats all the competitors on Linux.
Okay, I think the next question, I think you already answered. So the box use KVM, right?
Yes.
Okay. So for Windows virtual machines, does it require to install it with virt.io in order to enable the features of file sharing between host and VM?
Not for file sharing. virt.io file system is something that we actually are aiming to support, which would provide file sharing in a much higher performance. But what we support nowadays is WebDev, which is a technology that uses some sort of a web server for file sharing. So in this case, the virt.io driver is not used for file sharing. But in the future, we hope to do so because of performance. It's much better with the virt.io FS devices.
Cool. And another question, I mean, like, can we do the hot sizing of the VMs while running the virtual machines?
I suppose that this is about auto-scaling the display as you go?
It's not like sort of auto-scaling. For example, just now you turn on the Windows virtual machines, right? And then, for example, if we allocated like 4 gig of memory, then we suddenly decided to increase it to 6 or 8 GB. So can we just do it on the fly, or we need to shut the VM down and then change the configurations of the RAM and then start it back?
Yeah, you need to restart. Boxes is going to allow you to change, but then it's going to pop up and say that the changes are only going to apply on the next boot. So you can change it, but you're not going to see the changes. So technically you cannot.
So it means like while changing you can do, but the changes will take effect after you restart the VM, is it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Another question is it possible for Box to emulate ARM image like Raspberry Pi image and with the ARM 64 architecture?
Not as of today on stable, but I'm having a branch developing this feature. The QEMU emulator already supports ARM emulation. It's just a question of Boxes deciding now which devices get assigned and supported by certain architectures. So to give you a very out of top of my mind example, we have ACPI devices which control the power management of architecture that certain ARM images are not going to support that type of device. So Boxes still needs to be smart about which devices to assign to a certain deployment. So ARM emulation doesn't work nowadays out of the box. You can get to work if you do some fiddling in the configuration files, but the idea is that for GNOME 42 or 43, I'm going to land this branch that introduces the default support that is going to work automatically, as we like to say.
Okay, just just out of curiosity, I mean, is there any plans to release box for Windows as a VirtualBox alternative in the future?
Well, we don't have the resources for Windows development, and most of our stacks development on Windows is still very much developed on a builds basis, which is like we develop something and it builds on Windows, but we are not actually actively testing things on Windows. So not boxes, but I have seen recently Will's experiment. Will Thompson is a GNOME community contributor. He has experiences with Double SL, which is like the Windows subsystem for Linux, and he has managed to run GNOME applications in it. So there is some hope in that front, I would say, especially because the virtual machines, they don't necessarily need to be running on your same host machine. So you could use boxes to connect to a virtual machine running on a Linux box from Windows. So that could be also a scenario. But as far as it is today, it doesn't work on Windows.
Oh. So last questions, I think. Does Windows 11 works on box?
Not yet. Another thing for GNOME 42. Windows 11 had actually some, I wouldn't say a misunderstanding, but a change of expectations that during its development, Microsoft communicated that they were not going to impose their security hardware restrictions on virtual machines. So when they detect that Windows is installed in a virtual machine, they will not apply those restrictions. So I was installing Windows 11 various times during the development, but when Windows 11 got announced, they start to actually require TPM devices. So this is some secure boot mechanism and requires emulation of the TPM device in the boxes side. There's patches on the virtualization list, like libvirt list, about automatically creating an emulator for TPM devices and passing them through for the virtual machines. So we hope that boxes are going to support Windows 11 in GNOME 42, which probably comes out in February next year, I would say. But as of today, unfortunately, it does not. But I've seen people who actually install Windows 10 and manage to upgrade from 10 to 11 in boxes, and that seemed to work.
Oh, okay. So so it bypass checking the TPM, is it?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. So any more questions from the floor? Okay. If no questions, so I would like to thanks Mr. Philip for your times and the sharings and also the answers for all the questions given, and hoping that we can meet again in the future's event in Godek. For example, that maybe we can meet face to face if God permit. Okay. Thank you to all the participants for today's event. So hoping that we can meet you guys again at the same time tomorrow evening, local Malaysia time. And thank yous for today and have a great evening. Thank you guys.